The eventual remaking of the federal judiciary, to the extent that President Biden is capable of doing that in the few years he'll have, is begun, with Merrick Garland being elevated to Attorney General, leaving his spot on the DC Circuit of Appeals now open. And it turns out it's looking like there might be a front runner to take that spot. That situation and what might happen from there will be explained to us by our guest who joins us now, senior reporter for Insider, Camila DeChaulus. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Very glad to have you on. So, how is it looking? There is, as you wrote in an awesome write-up of some of the political possibilities that might come, a front runner. But who is it, and how sure is it that this might be the person?
So, ever since the vacancy of Merrick Garland's spot on the circuit court, a lot of names have been circulating, but one that kind of everybody's been talking about, and there's been a lot of buzz around, is Ketanji Brown Jackson filling that role. And this is someone who has received wide bipartisan support from not only Democrats, but also Republicans who have vouched for her character and talked about how just her expertise in the law and her past rulings have really made a great impression on both Republicans and Democrats. And so this is someone that's seen as a shoo-in, that's not, there's also reports saying that, as the moment she gets on the circuit, if there's an opening on the Supreme Court, her name will be thrown into the hat because, as you know, President Joe Biden has talked about how he wants to fill the next Supreme Court seat with a woman of color. And so her name is also top of the ticket as well.
So yeah, there's these two levels that I definitely want to talk about. The actually getting on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, but like I'm too excited by the Supreme Court possibilities as well. What's going to happen there? So why is it that the belief is that she would immediately be a front runner were a spot to open up? Is it, as you alluded to, the fact that the Republicans have spoken favorably of her in the past, so that could potentially avert some of the trouble of a nomination battle?
Yes, this is something that, as Joe Biden has come into his presidency and has vocally supported wanting to kind of fill his cabinet seats and also the judicial branch with more people of color. This is going to see something that a lot of people want to see that he actually go through and accomplish. And I think a lot of people, she has support on the left because of some of her rulings on Trump and what she said in some of her opinions that has kind of brought a little forefront of light of where she stands on certain positions. But I think also the fact that a lot of how she writes her opinions has gained a lot of support from Republicans because she doesn't just focus on one fact, she really takes in the whole law, and you can really see her breadth of knowledge on a variety of issues, which has made her a favorite from just, every kind of political party there is. And I think a lot of people, Biden wants an easy Supreme Court win if he is given the opportunity to kind of fill this seat. And so I think a lot of people see that she won't just, appeal to, more liberal lawmakers, but she also has some backing of Republicans who have stated on the record that she is really qualified for her role now and for potential roles in the future.
So if we could delve into the land of speculation for just a second, I'm just curious. I understand the argument that she received unanimous approval from Senate Republicans. Like I get that as a potential setting up a precedent where they might support her, but that was in 2013. And 2013 Republican Party is slightly different than it is right now. So I'm curious about your personal opinion. Do you feel like they would actually feel bound by that? I mean, Mitch McConnell's philosophy on Supreme Court nominations changed quite a bit between 2016 and 2020.
Oh, completely. I think there's a little bit more pressure now for even if they don't support her to give a real reason to why. I mean, we've seen in some of the cabinet nominees that Biden has put forth, whether it's Vanita Gupta to fill a key role in DOJ, or what we saw with Neera Tanden, who was nominated to be at the OMB. I think what we've seen when Biden has nominated women of color or people of color is that, some Democrats have stated that they felt like it was a little bit of a double standard, that women of color that were picked to these really top positions in his cabinet or within his administration was given more tougher criticism, and Republicans went after them. And so there's been a lot of conversations whether this is a double standard and whether Republicans are picking on the people of color that Biden has nominated. And McConnell's office, of course, has stated that there is no double standard, that he's treating every candidate or nominee fairly. But especially with a Supreme Court nominee, there's going to be a little bit more pressure for them to make a substantial argument of why she couldn't fill this position, or that she's not qualified to. And so I think they're a little bit more under pressure now, because I mean, there is a little bit of an urgency to, if a seat is vacated, for them to fill it, but also for them to, I think a lot of people are monitoring, how they treat different nominees.
Sure, I think we saw quite a bit of that with the nomination battle over Deb Haaland as well. So in terms of her past, I know that some of the more recent Republican choices for the Supreme Court, whether they ended up choosing them or they were on the short list, they tended to go for people who are fairly young, who had less of a recorded case history. We had to do quite a bit more speculation about where they might fall ideologically. When it comes to Brown Jackson, how much do we know about her ideology in different areas, like like corporate power, campaign finance, criminal justice, those reproductive rights? Do we know quite a bit about her?
Well, she's actually been able to rule on quite a few different cases. And so it is really interesting when you look at her trajectory of the cases she's handled in the past. I mean, she handled what a lot of people know of her now too, is some of her handling on Trump, on cases that involved the former president. And a lot of people kind of cited that as saying, she's a little bit more on the liberal side. But I think if you look at her trajectory of not only when, in the past 5 years, but I think you can see that she doesn't have a particular focus. I think she's covered so many things that would make her qualified for taking on the Supreme Court, which is everybody's looking at to make these really big weigh in on a lot of really key issues right now.
Interesting. And of course, we've been talking about the possibility that this individual could end up on the Supreme Court. As of right now, there are of course no openings. Is it the expectation that one might develop soon? And if so, who is the common wisdom thinking it might be?
Well, it's really interesting right now because there's a lot of reports circulating that, the Biden administration or officials within the White House is trying to kind of pressure Judge Breyer to retire. So this can kind of go a little bit more quickly. And so we could see a vacancy open up. And I mean, the justice has actually talked about retiring, but there's still a question of when. And so I think there's there's organizations like Demand Justice and other advocacy organizations who are really trying to push the possibility of nominating someone on the Supreme Court a little bit rather now than 3 years down the road.
And you can sort of, I guess, understand the pressure right now. It's such a narrow Senate majority that anyone, God forbid and all that, but getting sick or stepping down as a result of a scandal, almost any political change in the Senate would be enough to make it potentially impossible for Joe Biden to actually nominate someone. Are you hearing concerns about that as part of the rationale to push Breyer in this direction?
I think it's in the forefront of everyone's mind that time is of the essence, that this upcoming midterm election could really decide the fate of who controls the Senate in the next 2 years. And so there is this kind of quiet behind the scenes push that these advocacy groups are meeting with White House officials, trying to understand the timeline, because there is that in the back of the mind that time is of the essence. They need to do this now rather than later when Democrats may not have control over the Senate at all. It really will depending on kind of the results of the midterm election.
Interesting. Well, if you're watching this and you want more details about the judge, Camila's write-up is available right now at Insider with a lot more details about some of the decisions and how this might play out politically. But we want to thank you for joining us and breaking down your work. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.